First up, I want to welcome our ranking member back. We've missed you. And if the WebEx person can tell me who's on WebEx, members of the committee.
Hello, Mr. Chair. The representatives or the members of the committee that are on WebEx are Representative Stephen Howe and Representative Potter.
Okay. So those are the members that are on WebEx. Representative Howe and Potter?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Well, that's two. Just looking at the count here. 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have 11. 23. We need one more.
Mr. Chair, there's also an Elijah Reddington. Is he on this committee or no? He's a comfrey? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
We have enough now. And here comes Representative Heiberger. We now have enough members for a quorum. First up, bill introductions from committee members. I saw Representative Penn here earlier at caucus, but he is not here now. That's the number? Okay. All right. I'll see if he comes in, and then if not, I'll introduce it. Any other bill introductions from committee members? Seeing none. Bill introductions from the audience. Come up. Please identify yourself and give us the RS number.
Thank you. Sorry. Again, my name is Kevin Barone. I'm here on behalf of Can Industrial Hemp, 22 RS 2834, and it's a bill bringing our state law up to federal law on industrial hemp.
Thank you. Without objection, it's accepted. Representative Penn, you have a bill introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Chairman, I have a bill here with RS number 22, RS 2839 that I'd like to introduce concerning elections and audits.
Thank you. Questions of Representative Penn? Seeing none, without objection, it's accepted. Any other bill introductions from the audience or from committee members? Seeing none, bill introductions are closed. We're going to go straight into the briefing about the interim committee that we had. Jordan, if you'd be so kind. And members, you should have received this by email. You could have reviewed it. Should have reviewed it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholm, Legislative Research. As Mr. Chairperson said, we emailed out a copy of the report yesterday. So I'm just going to be going through it basically in order. I won't read the whole thing to you, obviously, but I'll summarize it for you, and you can follow along as I'm going through this document. So the Special Committee on Liquor Law Modernization was directed to evaluate the current laws in Kansas pertaining to alcoholic liquor, wine, beer, and cereal malt beverages. In its evaluation, the committee was directed to study the current laws and regulations on those beverages, study recently enacted legislation on those beverages, make recommendations to the 2022 legislature to harmonize existing provisions and ensure the law treats regulated beverages and associated licensees in a similar fashion. I'm going to be skipping a page here to go into some of these meeting summaries. First of all, the committee was authorized by the LCC to meet for 4 days, and the committee met at the State House on August 31st, October 7th and 8th, and November 10th, 2021. The first meeting on August 31st, the committee had some informational presentations. They heard from the Director of Alcoholic Beverage Control, Debbie Beavers. They heard from the Reviser of Statutes staff on recently enacted legislation, and they heard from, they also discussed the three-tier system with the ABC director, and they discussed a number of topics and asked for research on those topics. Some of those topics included sales of alcohol at the state fair, sampling of alcohol at the state fair, tax rates, local government zoning requirements, tax credits, franchise agreements. They asked about home delivery of alcohol products and for some statistics. During that interim period between that meeting and the August 7th meeting, staff collected research on those topics and compiled some memorandums. Both of those memorandums were presented at the next meeting on October 7th. And then also, conferee testimony began on that date. There's quite a number of conferees who testified on various topics. I won't get into all of those, but we heard from representatives from all different types of licensees and alcoholic interest groups. At the November 10th meeting, the committee reviewed all of the information that had been presented to it. They discussed any outstanding questions that they had researched in the interim time between the October 8th meeting and the November 10th meeting. And then they made some recommendations after their discussion of all that information that they had received. So going back to the first page of the report, I'll walk through the conclusions and recommendations. So the introductory recommendation, which was actually more of a statement that the committee made, was that the committee wishes to make the legislature aware of the collateral effects of alcohol on the lives of Kansans and urges the legislature to be diligent in monitoring such effects. Then the committee went into making recommendations, and we have these broken out by category. So starting with the state fair, the committee recommended that the appropriate House Standing Committee conduct hearings on 2021 SB 2 as introduced, which concerns the consumption of alcohol on the grounds of the state fair and collection of associated liquor taxes, and that standing committee consider taking action on the bill. For farm wineries, the committee recommended that a farm winery automatically be eligible for a drinking establishment license as an agribusiness without regard to any other local building codes or restrictions. They also recommended that a licensee automatically be granted a CMB license in the same manner as producer licenses, because producers are automatically, under current law, allowed or given those licenses. For urban farm wineries, the committee recommended that the legislature or an appropriate committee study the possibility of establishing a separate urban winery license that would have no Kansas agricultural production requirement. So what that would mean, under the current law, in order to have a winery license, there is a production requirement that so much of the grapes processed into wine at that winery be grown in Kansas. And so that this would establish a separate urban farm winery, so it'd be just a separate category and would be likely located closer to a city or in a larger populated area. For the tax rate on wine, the committee recommended the introduction of legislation to amend the law concerning the excise tax to increase the 14% alcohol by volume threshold, and that would match the recently raised federal taxation threshold of 16% ABV for certain wine classes. So that's in response, like I said, to a federal change that would just match the federal law. And then finally, the last recommendation was on the sale and delivery of alcoholic beverages between a retailer and certain licensees for resale. So the committee recommended the introduction of legislation to amend the provisions of current law to authorize a retail liquor store licensee to sell and deliver alcoholic liquor and CMB to a caterer or to the licensed premises of a public venue, club, or drinking establishment for resale by that licensee, regardless of the proximity to the retailer. The committee heard some information from the director of ABC, and they also reviewed the statutes on that topic. That currently there's a question as to how far away a liquor store can be located from a licensee to purchase those beverages for resale. And so this recommendation is recommending legislation to further clarify those provisions. And then, of course, the last listed here is that the committee did not propose legislation, so it made these recommendations, but the committee was not authorized to introduce legislation by itself. So these recommendations were just that an appropriate committee look at these topics. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions that the committee might have.
Questions of research about the interim committee? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The initial commentary they made about making the legislature aware of the collateral effects of alcohol on the lives of Kansans, is there any such report that's prepared as far as, like, DUIs or alcohol abuse related to domestic violence or to violent crime? I mean, is that ever tabulated?
Thank you for the question. So that was a question of the committee. They had requested that we look into providing the statistics, any statistics we could find on alcohol-related crimes and some of those violent crimes that you mentioned as well. So we requested information from the KBI, and they provided us statistics on a number of different crimes, and we reported that to the committee and provided those statistics to the committee that we were provided by the KBI. But we did not present any specific reports that linked any of those together. We simply reported the statistics as we've been provided by the KBI.
Thank you. Representative Arnkamp? Did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. As far as delivery of liquor, can you go into what's currently the rule or the law or the assumed rule on the distance, and just a little bit more on that discussion, please?
Sure. I'd say that I'd let the revisors weigh in if there's anything that I misstate on this. But my understanding is the law currently says it has to be an adjacent county to the location of the licensee. And so there's been a question of whether you could purchase that, say, at a store, and delivery is part of that. Sorry, I should back up. Delivery is part of that. And so looking at that, there's been a question of whether you could purchase alcohol a couple hours down the road and then pick it up at that location, because then it wouldn't be delivered to you in that county. That would be several counties away. And so that's my understanding of the question on that topic. There's a question between what the law says and how it's been interpreted.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, can a liquor store deliver, even if they are in an adjacent county? Can they deliver?
My understanding is they can. I'd let the revisors weigh in case there's anything to add to that.
Yes, revisor, if you would.
There was a bill introduced in this committee dealing with delivery, and it hasn't been printed yet, but the bill on the adjacent county, there was a bill to make it basically any county, and that's 2502, which is in this committee. So does that answer?
Sorry, as far as specifically delivery, currently can a liquor store deliver alcohol to a caterer or a restaurant? Can they deliver currently?
It's a question I don't know the answer to right off the top of my head. I can check for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions to the interim committee report? Again, seeing no questions, thank you, Jordan. We're going to move right along. I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 2267, creating the Kansas Youth Advisory Council. Revisor, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the bill creates the Kansas Youth Advisory Council established by this Bill 2267. The purpose is to foster communication among groups of engaged youth with the governor, the legislature, and other state and local policymakers regarding programs and policies affecting youth and their families, and to advocate for different things. The Kansas Youth Advisory Council would consist of not more than 21 individuals aged 14 to 20 years of age who reside in Kansas. They serve 2 years, 11 of them, and 10 would be appointed to serve 1 year. The membership would be selected by the executive director of the Kansas Human Rights Commission or designee, and the membership would be a diverse membership taking into consideration race, ethnicity, disabilities, gender, geographic residence, and so on. This council would establish their own rules and operating policies. They would be required to meet at least quarterly, and the Kansas Human Rights Commission shall coordinate the activities of this advisory council and provide staff. If there's questions, I'll try and answer them, but basically this one-page bill kind of speaks for itself. So,
All right, yes, Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see any provision for compensation for members. Is that?
there is none in the bill at this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of the reviser? Seeing none, thank you, Mike. We have one proponent, Elijah Reddington. I think he's on WebEx. Are you there, sir?
Yes. Good morning, Chairman.
Thank you. You have 4 minutes.
All right. I want to first thank the chairman and the committee for allowing me to testify today in support of HB 2267. My name is Elijah Reddington. I was born and raised in Newton, Kansas, and I'm currently joining you from the University of Iowa, where I'm from. HB 2267 is a bipartisan bill that would create a Kansas Youth Advisory Council, which would be a contributor and positive change in the state of Kansas and a resource for bridging the gap between government officials and the viewpoint of Kansas teens. The process of creating HB 2267 started about 3 years ago and came about from a friend of mine, Eli Blofis, who was inspired after hearing about the Iowa Youth Advisory Council. Since its formation, IYAC has helped pass legislation to ban certain synthetic drugs, required radon testing in schools, and worked with Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds to declare May as Iowa Mental Health Awareness Month. Not only this, but members who have served on the council serve as liaisons for the school boards, meaning that they're making an impact on both the state and local level. It has even inspired some of its alumni to run for office and serve in jobs of public service. If this bill is passed, then Kansas would have the same opportunity to hear a voice that is not always well represented in policymaking. This council would work closely with legislators by providing feedback on bills, proposing legislation, and providing a youth point of view. One topic in particular that many youths are concerned about is the impact of social media on their mental and physical health, and the kind of influence that it has also had on their education. Another example is the use of electronic devices like laptops and iPads in the classroom. These are both topics that might not be things that many committee members and lawmakers in the state of Kansas have had to deal with while growing up and going in high school. That's exactly why having a high schooler's perspective is crucial to choosing the best course of action for policymaking and future legislation. In researching if our peers would see the same importance in the Youth Advisory Council, Mr. Blofis and myself reached out to every high school student government in the state of Kansas. We received just over 100 responses from all across the state, all the way from Douglas County in the northeast to Morton County in the southwest, all of which viewed the Youth Advisory Council favorably. I feel it is easy to see the enthusiasm of youth in Kansas as a way to get their voices heard at the state government. As more issues that directly affect our state's youth come to the floor this year and in the future, it is apparent that youth deserve a place at the table, and not just a place at the kiddie table like at Thanksgiving either, somewhere where their voice will be represented and heard. The passage of this bill would do just that by fostering a working relationship between a group of engaged youth with every aspect of the state government, from the governor's office to individual lawmakers. This bill has precedent to allow the youngest Kansans to help determine the future of the great state that they will one day inherit. I thank you again for your time and hope that you will consider HB 2267 favorably.
Thank you. Questions of the proponent? Yes, Representative Hazel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Elijah, for submitting this testimony. In full transparency, I am a sponsor of this bill. And I see in my community, too, that we see young people who've lived in a community their entire lives and unfortunately don't get the opportunity to seek higher education in our state, but still they have such that lived experience to contribute to our communities. In this question, I guess, how would Elijah, if you were to live out of state, go to another school state, do you think that this type of council would also be more welcoming to have Kansans, young Kansans, be involved in our governmental process, but also another solution to keeping young Kansas to come back to Kansas, to plant roots, to start families here, to build to our economic system?
I certainly do. Thank you for that great question, Representative. The way I would view it is that if a young person has an impact in forming the Kansas that they want to see, that they want to grow up in, they'll also see it as a place that they want to raise a family, that they want to live out the rest of their life, to get a job. If they're going to make an impact in a state, they want to live out what the positive results of how they've contributed to it.
Thank you. Representative Howe? Hoyt?
No, Howe.
Howe. On WebEx?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My question is, why the Human Rights Commission, why is that chosen as the kind of the designee for appointing members to this committee?
I don't know the specifics as to why the Human Rights Commission was chosen for that. I think it was more to do with making sure the selection process who serve on this council are all from the diverse backgrounds from across the state of Kansas, and making sure that it's fair in the representation of the youth, so it's not just specifically like youth from only one city are on this council.
Thank you. Other questions from committee? Yes, Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along those same lines, this bill is simple, one page. It says that the Kansas Youth Advisory Council not only sets and appoints all of these, or the executive director or the designee, but they also, in line 28, says that, I'm sorry, I'm at the wrong line, 24, that they make their own rules, subject to approval by the executive director's designee. Two-part question. Do you see any space in here to have a more diverse organization or body making these appointments? And number two, is there any accountability for this process outside of just being at the whim of the Human Rights Commission?
Yeah, so I'm not too certain itself how the designee or the Human Rights Commission itself would decide to go about this choosing the specific members, whether that would be involving some representatives in it as well, in the process as well, so that they could get their input on who they would like to see working on this council. And I would also believe that in terms of accountability, a lot of the rules that are made up by the youth, not the Human Rights Commission in this case. So that would include a lot like how Iowa has structured their Youth Advisory Council. They have set up a structure where the leader of the council is actually a youth member who has once been a part of the council, and they basically are facilitating conversation, helping lay out the agenda for future years. So it's almost a self-sustaining group that I'd imagine after the first 10 members, as mentioned in the bill, it would also include them in helping decide who the new members are in the future. So it wouldn't just be the designee, it would also be the youth choosing who could help out on this committee, who would be a great fit for diversifying the input that comes in.
Thank you. Do you have another?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-on. Do you see any prohibition to other organizations joining in the governing body of this youth council for either yourself or for the sponsor? And I'm particularly asking about different types of demographics, be it rural, religious, age, anything that, any demographic or any persons or groups that would like to be in a part of this.
All right, let me know if this answers your question because I'm not certain, but there would be no restriction on who could join or what their background is, whether it be religious or financial, how well educated they are. If you come from a rural town, I think Gossel, Kansas is one of the high schools that responded to us. There's members there who are very invested in their local government and would love to be just as invested and dedicated to helping the state government. And sure, maybe they might be going to a technical college, or they might be going directly into a field where there'll be welding. That's still an important mindset. There's still a youth in Kansas, so they do deserve a spot on this council.
Thank you. No further questions? Oh, Representative?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And then just the age requirement in the bill that says age 14 to 20. And to my understanding of the bill's purpose, Elijah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's for the demographics to pick the representatives and to bring awareness of whoever wants to apply for that. But all I see is just the age requirement. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Nothing further of this proponent. Thank you very much, sir. We have no other proponents. I will close that portion of the hearing and go to the opponents. Again, I have no opponents listed today. I do have one neutral, and is Ruth Glover, Director of Kansas Human Rights Commission. Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Federal and State Affairs. You have 4 minutes if you wish to use all the time.
My name is Ruth Glover. I'm with the Kansas Human Rights Commission. The Kansas Human Rights Commission is the state's anti-discrimination agency. We accept complaints of discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodation. The way that we carry out our mission primarily is through the acceptance of complaints alleging discrimination. We investigate those and resolve those. We are an investigative fact-finding body. We are not an advocacy agency. And so our recommendation would be for your consideration that the Kansas Youth Council be placed with other advocacy offices and commissions rather than us, since we don't carry out advocacy work. There are a number of offices and commissions that are advocacy based in nature. And so we feel that the Kansas Youth Council, being an advocacy body, would have greater synergy with these other advocacy offices and commissions, that they would have contacts, business practices, and maybe a synergy that they could provide that would better support the Kansas Youth Council than what we would have. Also, we could see that advocating on different youth issues might potentially create a conflict of, with our cases, since we carry out our work in a neutral, unbiased manner. If it is decided that the Kansas Youth Council should be placed with the Kansas Human Rights Commission, then of course we would carry out our duties to the best of our ability. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director. I have a question about how does a person become the Executive Director of the Kansas Human Rights Commission?
Well, I was hired into the commission as the assistant director. I served several years with as the assistant director. When the previous executive director retired, then I served as the acting director for several months, and then the commission board selected me as the executive director. They had a application process that the executive director is selected by the commission board, and then the appointment is submitted to the governor's office for approval.
Yes?
So then, who selects the members of the commission board?
We have a commission board that has 7 members. There are 2 that represent industry, 2 that represent labor, 1 that represents housing, 1 that is large, and 1 that is a practicing attorney. Those appointees are selected by the governor, and they're submitted to the Senate for confirmation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Glover. Appreciate your clarifying what the Kansas Human Rights Commission is involved with, and I do appreciate that. My question is, who are the advocacy offices in the state government? We actually have advocacy offices?
There's the Commission on Disability Concerns, the African American Affairs Commission, the Hispanic and Latino American Affairs Commission, and the Native American Affairs Office.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Glover, were you approached before this bill was wrote?
We were not approached about providing administrative support to the Kansas Youth Council. But as I mentioned, if we are selected to provide that support, we'll do that to the best of our abilities. But as I mentioned, we think an advocacy council would be best served by being placed with other offices and commissions that are advocacy in nature.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, is one of your missions to protect people against age discrimination?
Yes, and in Kansas, the threshold for age discrimination is 40 and over to coincide with the federal law.
So does this bill fly in the face of your mission, given that it on its face discriminates on the basis of age?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, it says you have to be a certain age to
Well,
qualify, and that's
we
I think
wouldn't
it's
have
40,
jurisdiction
Pardon?
over appointments to the council, because our limit is employment, housing, and public accommodation. So public accommodation is generally considered to be businesses offering goods and services to the public, and we don't cover government services underneath public accommodations.
Okay. Well, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I've gotten a little testy since I turned septuagenarian.
That shocks us all. Truly does. We didn't think you had gotten there yet, but Representative Arnkamp, no questions. Thank you. No
All
further.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no one else listed. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to offer some testimony on this bill? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on House Bill 2267. Committee, we're going to be here tomorrow, and we're going to be here Thursday. If you're not going to make it, please notify the ranking member, the vice chair, or my office so that I can get someone appointed. I know, I don't know how many people is going to be missing today on the House, but we are going to be working some bills, and I'll probably have to get a couple of replacements. But please let us know that if you can. I understand you may wake up that morning and just can't make it. That's understandable. But if you have an appointment that you know you're going to go to and you'll miss the committee, let me know. Anything else for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.